Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show, travel channel for master builders. Why do I do this? Why do I want you guys to travel? Why do I want you guys to understand buildings around us? It's part of being a master builder. It's part of understanding how great architecture influences the design. And we're going to look at a stunning house, the Gamble house. I did a video a couple years ago. Come join me today in the Build Show. Okay guys, the Gamble house. Charles and Henry Green, they went to trade school for learning how to work with their hands and work with their tools. Go out to California to be with their parents and they become architects. And so they have a period of time of probably a 10 or 15 year period of time where they build these amazing houses in the early 1900s, and they're really out of business by about 1915, 1916. And so their house, the Gamble house, the Procter and Gamble money people, okay, in the early 1900s built this house. It's called the ultimate bungalow. It's termed that today. It wasn't termed that then. They built an amazing styled house. They were influenced by a number of different things. In 1893, they stop in Chicago at the World's Fair and they look at a very influential exhibit was the Japanese pagoda, the Japanese gardens and everything else that was brought over. It was crafted by these craftsmen using hand tools, putting this thing together. Now remember, it's called the White City. It was a spectacle of design and everything else, these huge, monstrous, classical buildings, and then off to the side, off in this little island, was the Japanese pavilion, and it was very influential. Frank Lloyd Wright was influenced by it, as well as the Green brothers. And the things that you see that were evident in Japanese architecture, the big overhanging eaves, the craftsman style, and Gustav Stickley was very influential. Frank Lloyd Wright with the prairie style was very influential. And in California, Green and Green were very influential. So there's this whole movement about architecture and things that are going on, defining and expressing architecture in a different way. The Gamble house is amazing. It's a beautiful work of art. The craftsmanship is unbelievable. It's timeless, right? You still go out there and it has this presence. It doesn't look outdated. It looks very comfortable on the lot. The gardens, the way things open up, the outdoor sitting areas and living areas, it's just a magical place. And so one is that you go there and you just like, wow, this is really special. How do they do that? How do they create that? Well, one of the things is that organically the house seems to grow up from the ground. How do they do that? Well, you'll see that there's big boulders that come up out of the ground that are actually in the brick walls, and the bricks kind of move around these boulders and really seem to grow out of the ground. All right, so let me just look at a couple pictures here and talk about some of the design elements inside this house that make it unique. I want to start with that front door and the leaded glass, and just talking about how inspirational this can be. Jake, our buddy here on the Build Show, I did a project for him in Missouri for a client who wanted a green and green door. Now, thankfully, I knew what a green and green door was, right? I understood what the leaded glass was and how the door was constructed and how it could be put together. Now, in order to execute that door, we needed to find a really good leaded glass person, because some of the pieces of lead on that door are, an inch wide. And what's happened is they've actually taken the lead and they've made it into a decorative element, almost like it's got bark. And so that design is of this tree that's kind of growing up, and you're almost seeing the bark in the lead, right? So lead's fairly soft and it has this texture to it. So part of us executing this in a good way was actually to find someone who could do that, right? You can't just go to Home Depot and get glass like that. The color of the glass is important. The size of the leading is important. So there's a bunch of different elements that make it successful or not. And this was an example of a door inspiring us to build better. Probably the best thing to do is look at that stair. And if you just look at the composition of that freaking stair, it's unbelievable. And so one, you're walking into this entry hall and there's this cozy little bench that sits in that's tucked in that the stairs wrap around. Now you'll notice that this stair and that balustrade kind of lifts up, and there's this idea in the green and green architecture called this cloud lift pattern. and this cloud lift kind of has this drop down, almost as if the cloud in the sky is kind of lifted up. And you see that cloud lift pattern as the handrail of the balustrade as it goes up. Notice too the pegging, okay? The pegging is that simple communicative detail that shows it's kind of hand put together and hand pegged and hand mortised so that it goes together. If you look at that long wall, there's all these kind of short butts of pieces of wood. What is that? What's going on there? Well, in Japanese architecture and sometimes in French and in timber framed architecture, sometimes you'll have these keys, okay? Sometimes they're dovetails, sometimes they're different woods, but those are keys that keep those long timbers from slipping, from moving. And if you look at the brackets as you go up the top, there's almost these beams coming together, and you'll see these metal straps. The metal straps have this metal wedge that goes in there that kind of cinches things together. I mean, it's so well thought out, it's so well conceived, so well put together, so well crafted that it's magical, right? And so you look at it and you could stare at it in awe, as I have and I'm doing here, just looking at it going, yeah, that's really well put together. That's really well thought through. Oh, look how they did that. Oh, look how they did that. So many exciting things there of the organization, the craftsmanship, the beauty. If you do the tour, okay, and I recommend it, you'll see the kitchen. Now, probably if you've worked on historic houses and you work with clients, they say, I want to build a kitchen, but it needs to be incorporated into the house. So one of the things I do is I spend a lot of time studying historic kitchens. That one is awesome, okay? You'll notice that there's not a lot of upper cabinets. It is the original kitchen. You'll see how it's opened up. And this is a kitchen that I think would be very successful today for a lot of our clients because just the way it's simplicity. We've got a lot of clients that are building new kitchens with no upper cabinets because it just gets too much. And so this is that simplified, awesome design that still works and is still awesome. One of the great things about going out there and seeing the Gamble House is that there's a whole neighborhood of green and green houses out there, and there's a walking tour once a month you can go around. But just even if you missed a walking tour, just walk around and you're going to see some amazing houses, amazing neighborhoods. The walls that wrap around these houses, the landscaping, the materials that they're using, all are wonderful inspirations that will help you get inspired to build better. Another one's called the Duncan Irwin House, and its fireplace goes up and you'll see the white rocks, white stones coming up out of the ground. It's awesome the way they've done that, and they've created this grounding, for lack of a better word, that makes it magical, makes it special. Another great detail is there's a garage around the corner, and the way they've executed this brick and this brick arch over this opening and these crazy cool doors that communicate and kind of get hints to the architecture and the woodwork inside. I mean, it's a awesome garage. You might say, well, I can't do a door like that because I got to do an overhead door. Really? Do you have to do an overhead door? Here's what I do with my guys in the field. They'll say to me, I can't get that. I go, what do you mean you can't get that? Well, so-and-so doesn't have it. And I say, well, okay, does that mean you can't get it? No, they got to call. Okay, they come back. They go, well, we can get it from this place to this place. Okay, well, why can't you do this? Well, and it causes them to think again. I'm challenging you right now. What's making you think that you have to have a door that's an overhead door? Why can't you have doors that open up and swing like this anymore? They certainly have the closers, okay, available today so that you could do a traditional garage door like that opens fairly quickly, fairly easily, and then closes back just the way the traditional ones do. This is what travel does. It causes you to think differently. It causes you to expand your mind. It causes you to go, I guess I really could do that. And build better. Another thing that happens is that you will see regional architecture and historical architecture influencing modern design. Okay, a good example is Colonial Williamsburg. If you go visit Colonial Williamsburg and you drive around the strip malls around there, they all look like Colonial Williamsburg. Why is that? Because there is an historic tradition, okay, not just about Colonial Williamsburg, but that whole area that has a building style and a building tradition that's been copied over and over again. So you see the similarities there. We don't have that heavy colonial revival thing in Texas, okay, because really our building stock, our historical building stock, really happens after 1900 into the 1930s. So we have a lot of period revival things. We have a lot of English Tudors, mission revivals, and in fact, if you look at the Montgomery Ward's building, built here in Fort Worth, there was another one in Kansas City, both were done in that mission revival style. So you go out to the West Coast, out where the Gamble House is, and you find that arts and crafts really has a strong appeal still in that market. There was a grocery store out there that looked like a mini green building as just put together because that arts and crafts styling was very influential out there, and it works. So realize, don't think that we just build houses in a vacuum and that it doesn't influence other things. The things that we're inspired by, the things that we're looking at are things that help us build better. And so being a master builder is understanding these different architectural styles so that you can recognize pieces and elements and details and go, oh, that's from that green and green period. Maybe you've had a client that said, we really like green and green architecture. We really like arts and crafts architecture. We really like bungalows, right? Those all should be clue-ins to you to tell you the kind of things that they're interested in. And if you've gone out and looked at arts and crafts, bungalow buildings, you are going to be better informed of a way to help them build better. Now, what I want to do is I want to go out to an historic neighborhood in our area and show you, one, how groundbreaking this house was, 1908, that most of the houses being built in 1908 were late Victorian houses, not these modern bungalow houses. And staying in Fairmount, it's a historic neighborhood here, one of the largest bungalow districts in the country, and there's just row after row of these houses, but you'll see that arts and crafts influence, that prairie style influencing, and we're going to go look at some of those houses and see how trickle-down design happens, right? That great architecture is built out there, and then it gets infused. It gets copied by home builders. It copies by plan book designers, and builders all around the country start picking up these houses, and we start building them. So 1908, and by 1912, 1915, certainly not in 1920, the bungalows are the majority of houses being built at that time. They're a very popular house style. So we're going to go check it out, and I'm going to show you how great design happens and show you why you need to be traveling more if you want to raise your game and be a great builder. Okay guys, so we're in Fairmount. This is one of the largest bungalow districts in the country. These are working man houses that were built from early 1900s till the 1920s. Now, there's a Victorian house down there about the 1700 block. It's a famous house. It was one of the first farms that then this neighborhood got built up. Now, we're talking about the Gamble House, and we're talking about how things look. And if you look up this street, you see the low slung front porches, the strong columns. You know, a lot of these columns have been changed. There's the tapered columns I've done videos about and everything else. But as you look around this street and you think, I wonder where the inspiration came from. Then we look at this one, right? Wow, I wonder where that came from. They've got the clinker brick, same as the Gamble House. They've got that kind of growing up out of the ground, the same as the Gamble House. And so there is clear, inspiration coming from the Gamble House and coming from that California bungalow. So these things are in our neighborhoods. They're all around us. And so, the form of this arts and crafts style, the prairie style, the craftsman style, is this simplicity. Remember, it's a rejection of the ornate Victorian. Low slung roofs, front porches, simple designs. And there's a reason why they're still so popular today, because they are timeless and they are inviting, and there's comfort of coming up under these porches. There's security, just like there was in the Gamble House. And so realize how cutting edge that was. Now, this house is probably 1915, so 7-8 years after that, and that dissemination of information, dissemination of good design does take time. And so we begin to see it later. We begin to see it spread out across the country and through other things because of this really great design. And the reason I encourage you to travel, encourage you to look at things, is because there are things like this in your neighborhoods I suspect you can find that are reminiscent of other things that all tie together, all come together. So there is a trickle-down effect. There is a trickle-down not only from the great house, but even this house, right? This house isn't normal in the neighborhood. It's not the most common feature, but you do see the clinker brick and these other things begin to disseminate even into the 1930s and 40s. When we're building new houses, okay, and we talk about building a narrative in them, this is why. Is because these houses tell a story. These houses communicate why they're being built. And so that that narrative, that story is what makes great houses great. Don't forget that the Gamble house was nearly painted white, okay? So they nearly painted all that beautiful millwork on the interior. Someone came along where they wanted to brighten it up. We laugh at that, right? Because we're like, how could you cover up this beautiful millwork? How could you cover up this story, right? Why would you want to tell a different story if we painted it white? So what we build matters, guys. What we build communicates what we care about, our values, and that's why architecture is so important.